What's going on, everybody? It's Ted again here with the Countdown to the Geeks.com, and I got another very special interview for you guys. She's a technical consultant on some of your favorite sci-fi TV shows like Star Trek Prodigy, Picard, and she's also starred in a few of those things, and she's here with us now, the one and only Erin Macdonald. How you doing, Erin?
Hi, thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
You have one of the coolest jobs ever. You get to help bring some of these TV shows, some of our favorite sci-fi shows to life. And you also have gotten a chance to appear in a few of those. How did this all come about? Is this something that they pursued you on, or did you kind of reach out there and see if, Star Trek, kind of the franchise is looking for consultants? How did this all first start with you?
Yeah, thanks. It actually started from conventions, so it's kind of come weirdly full circle that,
Wow.
when I left academia, I used to work as a professor and researcher, and I love teaching. I love teaching introductory astronomy and physics. And so when I left academia, I really missed that, but I was also a super nerd, and so I was going to conventions and felt like, hey, let's do a science of Star Trek. Like, or I'm also a huge Mass Effect player. And I was like, the science in Mass Effect is really good and more people should know about this. And so
Wow.
yeah. And so that's kind of how I got started. And then I was going to conventions all over the country giving these talks. And then I moved to Los Angeles. I had met a lot of creatives from doing this convention circuit for a number of years, and they started kind of connecting me with friends in the industry. And I got connected with CBS to come and give my talks at their official Star Trek events that are sort of the big licensed events. And that's kind of how I got on their radar. And then for Star Trek Discovery, which was the first one of sort of all of these shows coming back,
Sure.
um, in season 3, Michelle Paradise took over as showrunner, and she wanted to hire some scientists to help with the show that season. And so I, interviewed, and I think I did all right. And then, yeah, I mean, we had a conversation because they had all these other shows greenlit. There's all this Star Trek science and technology and lore to keep track of as well, in addition to regular like science.
Sure.
And we figured it would be a good match. So yeah, I've been doing that for about 5 years now, is working on all the shows.
I love it. And as a fan, I always just thought in my head that as a writer writing these shows, you had to be like really on your game and do your own research. And that probably takes a long time, research and discovery on like, potential theories out there and how things could work. Cause a lot of these things aren't necessarily happening, time travel, space travel, not there completely yet, but I always thought the writers had to do a lot of kind of the legwork, but it's great that they have individuals in the professional industry, in the aerospace industry, in the science industry or science kind of widespread sort of area, kind of helping them out and going over these things because it really grounds these shows, and that's part of the appeal with them is that even though it is science fiction, it just feels like we're working in a realm of possibility, a realm of what is possible out there in the future, not the near future, but definitely the future. So
Yeah.
I love hearing that, this type of collaboration, this type of creativity is all happening behind the scenes. So you first got started with Star Trek Discovery, and then I loved seeing that you worked on Picard because Picard, that final season, I watched the whole thing, but that final season, it just felt like it was one of the best seasons of any show out there. Just whether it's the nostalgia factor or just the fan service or just the writing, how spectacular it was just incredible. And every episode was just like a huge, massive event. What do you remember from your time working on the Picard series?
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong. That in terms of like being a Star Trek fan and watching it just was an incredible experience. For me, one of the things that I think is never going to lose its magic, I would say. And I definitely felt it with Picard because every show uses science differently, right? They, it's a spectrum. And so I think with, Picard, they didn't necessarily lean into like heavy science plots or big time travel plots or anything that required a ton of kind of figuring out all the science behind it. But certainly, like the various stories we had, escaping from a gravity well, doing all of these adventures. Uh, um, being able to be involved in that, for me, the biggest thing was getting to write and work on lines that would then be said by characters like Riker and Beverly Crusher, and
Massive.
that for me was the most incredible experience. Even just to touch and just add a single word that would then come out of Riker's mouth. It was just fantastic.
That's gotta feel, oh my God, that's gotta be an amazing feeling. I mean, you're not only, helping on these shows, you've also appeared in these shows. So you are a part of Star Trek lore now, and not too many fans get a chance to say that. And that would be an amazing thing for any Star Trek fan, is you're a part of lore. So you've appeared on, for example, Prodigy. You are sort of, you're not an AI. You're more like a virtual a teaching assistant on Star Trek Prodigy. How did they pitch this idea to you when that first came about?
Yeah, well, it went back to season 1 where we were having the kids go to Starfleet Academy, and one of the characters, Rock Talk, is a young girl who wants to be a scientist. And so as they were developing the first season, they asked me a lot of questions about like what I was like as a budding scientist, what my challenges were, what the ups and downs were. And so there was a lot of like little bits of rock talk that had kind of come from my own life. And so the showrunners, the Hageman brothers, were kind enough to be like, well, she has to meet Dr. Erin, like that has to be who she meets at Starfleet, to kind of set her on her path. And so that's kind of where it started, which again, huge honor. And I love Rock Talk. She's like my little child. And I just love her so much. And then, yeah, as we went into season 2 and we had this big time travel story and we were just engineering the whole thing, and it felt very like time variance authority type of
Yeah.
conversations. Um, we kind of reached a point where it was like, oh, like the writers were like, oh, we need an explainer video. Like we need like a Mr. DNA type.
Yes, Jurassic
Let's
Park, right? That's exactly what I
yeah.
thought about when I was watching. I was like, oh, this is great.
Yeah, and I mean, because this show, time travel's tough enough, and this is a kids show, and so it's like, how are we gonna ground them and try to explain what they're going through? And
I love it.
yeah, that's where it came from.
That's so cool. I don't know if you want to talk about season two a little bit. It just came out, I believe, a week, maybe a couple of weeks ago.
A couple weeks
Season
ago,
two
yeah.
just dropped, a Star Trek Prodigy. You're right about the stakes have been raised. It's getting into some very big theoretical ideas, and I think it's all fantastic. I haven't finished it yet, but I'm really loving the second season so far. Do you want to kind of tease fans about what they can expect or what's in store for season two of Star Trek Prodigy?
I love this season so much. I hope you are enjoying it as
Yes.
well. For me, it's we had Picard, which I feel was like a very literal sequel to The Next Generation. This is like a spiritual sequel to Voyager, which is one of my favorite series. It's not in so much that it's a direct sequel because those characters aren't the main focus. The kids are the focus. They're going on their adventures. But I feel like they utilize these legacy characters from Voyager so well and integrate them so well. It feels like I'm back with my Voyager family, which I love. And just quick anecdote, or I'm not going to spoil anything. I'm not going to spoil anything, but I cried so hard in the finale because it's so good and it just comes full circle, and I'm so proud of it. And I really hope that Star Trek fans give it a chance. I know there's a lot of barriers in the sense that it's an animated show, it's more targeted towards kids. I feel like the first couple episodes are very much for people who watched like the Clone Wars and who are familiar with that sort of universe. And then it backhands you and it goes, nope, you're watching Star Trek. And I just absolutely love it.
And you're not wrong, and I feel like that's something that Star Trek fans should completely understand. While it is a self-contained story, it is very much like within the Star Trek universe, and they make references not only to like different shows you watch and all that, but like different events in the Star Trek lore. And they're like,
Yeah.
oh, we should just do this. This is what happened whenever Captain so and so went up against the, whatever. And I'm just like, oh, this is great. Like, this is a show that knows it's within the franchise. And like, if you're a fan and you know all these things, these tidbits, there's a ton of Easter eggs and a
Yeah.
lot of cameos. You'll see a lot of starships that you're familiar with. So I'm like, people should know it's not just a kids animated series, but it's very much like celebrating Star Trek all
Yeah.
across the board, and fans will absolutely get a kick out of it if they watch it. So that's wonderful. You also were a technical consultant on a little film I just watched, featuring, uh, apologies, Emma Roberts, who's fantastic. Space Cadet. She plays Rex Simpson. Space Cadet. I'm gonna try and really quickly go through a brief summary. Space Cadet is about a girl who likes a boy, and in order to kind of get closer to him, she decides, I'm going to be an astronaut. And this is the mechanism she uses to kind of get closer to him. And little does she know, she kind of finds herself fully qualified to be there, despite the fact that she kind of had to lie her way to get into said academy. But tell us about, your time, and how much did you enjoy being a consultant on Space Cadet?
Absolutely loved it. I What I tell people is that it's like Legally Blonde goes to NASA, and
Yes. Yes.
and for me, I really, just as a fan, like, just enjoy the premise, the movie, everything about it just makes me happy and brings me joy. But I think it's also a great example for people about the what it means to be a science advisor, because we have so many times in Hollywood, you'll have writers who don't know any scientists, and it'll be like a buddy who has a cousin who works at JPL, right? That they call up and say, "Hey, I have this story. Can you read it and just tell me, help me out on the science?" And then they get laughed at, and the story gets torn to shreds, and then they never want to like work with a science advisor again because that was their experience. And so for a film like this, me as a consumer of media and someone who just loves storytelling, you have to get the tone super fast. And I'm
Right.
not going to come in and go through all the minutia, especially later in the film, which if you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about. I'm not gonna tear that apart because that's not the point of the movie. That's not why we're watching it. It is not The Martian. It is not designed to be very technically accurate.
Right.
It is meant to be a fun movie. But respect to, Liz Garcia and the team, that they wanted it to feel accurate enough. And so those scenes at NASA and all the training scenes and the way that the experts are talking about stuff, they wanted it to sound right. And I appreciate that and respect it. And so I feel like I came onto the project and I instantly got the tone. They knew that I got the tone. I wasn't going to tear it apart. I was just going to find the moments that we could make it accurate, and we'll run with that and have a good time. And I think we achieved that.
Yeah, it's a cute film, and you nailed it when you call it, Legally Blonde goes to NASA. It really did have that sort of that feel to it and that tone. Emma's charming and adorable in it throughout. And yeah, it was really fun. My family had a kick, watching it, and it was so great.
Good. I'm glad.
This is a big week for a lot of reasons. San Diego Comic-Con feels like it's gotten back to its full potential, its full power this year. Last year was sort of like a test run, getting back in the swing of things. But this year, back to its full power, and you are also attending. Have you attended a lot of San Diego before, or is this kind of your first big appearance?
I used to go with my uncle back in the 90s.
Amazing. That's awesome.
And then there was a huge gap, and it became what it is now. And the first time I went as a professional was in virtual San Diego Comic-Con in 2020. So it's been a big gap. I've attended a bunch of other conventions, but yeah, San Diego has changed so much. And like you said, I mean, we kind of went through the virtual stuff. We've had the COVID, protocols, and which have been great, but hard. And then
Sure.
we had the strikes last year. And so, I mean, COVID is surging again. We'll see how things go. But for the most part, it's going to be a party. And yeah, I mean, I'm just honored to stand on the stage with a lot of the people that I get to, talk about what we do. It's a very industry focused convention, which is really fun. And so, yeah, I get a kick out of it.
Tell us about your panel specifically. What is the main focus of it? And you talk about a few of those folks that you can be on stage with.
Yeah, so I'm going to be doing kind of some panels that are looking at how the writers and the scientists work together. So I'm working with a lot of other science advisors. I've got pretty much one on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. um, Exploring science and science fiction, from fact to fiction, and how science advisors make sci-fi better. So there's a clear theme in my panels.
Sure.
Um, but I think the one, they're all going to be really fun. The exploring the science and science fiction, that's really a scientist focused panel. So it's a lot of people who might have worked in TV and film, but it's mostly scientists who work at NASA and who work on various projects, and gives audiences an opportunity to ask questions. The one on Saturday I'm doing with Aaron Waltke, who was an executive producer on Prodigy. And so him and I are going to be talking about how we worked together, and specifically on Prodigy, and what that relationship looks like. And it'll probably I think there's some other folks on the panel, so it'll probably expand from that. But yeah, it's going to be fun. There's so much variety. I think people kind of only hear about and focus on the Hall H announcements and the big things that happen, which are still fun and great, but there are so many interesting, nuanced panels and conversations. And I really encourage people to look at the quote unquote smaller panels, because they're going to be some of your favorite TV writers that you just don't know about yet.
Yeah,
And
no, absolutely. If anybody is attending and they haven't already done so, I highly suggest you download the San Diego Comic Con app and make sure you update it for the new year, because that has not only all the best information on there, easy to find, easy to search individuals, TV shows, but the most up to date information. So if anything changes, if anything happens, it's going to be right there for you on the app. I've been 4 years before. This is my fifth time
awesome.
going. I took a big gap because I had a daughter. My wife and I had a daughter, and I was like, okay, I'm probably not going to go for a while. So she's old enough to where, like, I can start going again. So I'm gonna
Nice.
go. Gonna be great because going as press this year. So not only am I a massive fan of San Diego Comic Con, but this is kind of getting me closer to individuals like yourself, who I get to talk to about their panels and just about what they're working on and things like that. So it's a different challenge for me this time around. It's been pretty fantastic. I want to know just from you, when people ask you what is San Diego Comic Con like, how do you describe it to somebody
Oh,
who's never been before?
uh, it is, um, it is as if all of the nerds in Hollywood moved down to San Diego and cram themselves into a 2 mile radius for a week. So
I love that. I love that.
I always laugh because we all live in LA. We can get together anytime.
Yeah.
And yet it seems like we all go to San Diego and everyone's suddenly like, let's get a drink, let's get coffee, let's hang out. And we're
Yeah.
all, like, managing these crazy schedules. It's like, dude, we all live in LA, but Yeah, it is really fun. It's a party. It's very industry. Like if people want to see and get that Hollywood vibe, I think that's kind of the best place to do it, especially for nerd and genre folk.
Oh, absolutely. The way I always describe it to people is I just say it's the center of the universe for one whole week. The center of all fandom. It's just where it all happens. And there's always magical moments. Like there's things that happen that you do not anticipate, you do not expect. You're running into people you've never thought in a million years you would see. So I've had some fantastic, amazing times, and we don't have enough time to go through it all, but it's just like the most magical place on earth. No offense to Disney out there, but the most magical place on earth is San Diego Comic Con, and it is this week, and I am not prepared whatsoever. I hope you're doing a better job than I am. I have not packed. I have not planned. I'm barely getting my schedule together today, so hopefully I can finish that. And I hope you have a wonderful time. Congrats on all the panels. Congrats on all your success. Keep giving us and helping out with these incredible Star Trek shows and everything else because they're wonderful. And you have a hand in that. You are a part of that, and you are also a part of the Star Trek lore. Thank you again to Dr. Erin Macdonald for joining me today. And once again, I hope you have a great rest of your time over at San Diego.